Hi, welcome back to the Athena Protocol. We're going to be reading chapter 6 today with my guest, Ricky. See here, at the end of chapter 5, Jessie is in Belgrade. She's remembering when she met Hala, and she's just gotten to her room, the dingy apartment that she's staying at. I read a little bit further ahead, so I had to make sure I wasn't spoiling anything for you yet. So, chapter 6 starts on page 83. Adrenaline hits. I get up fast, heart pumping, and look for something to grasp hold of, ready to attack. I pick up a metal lamp base from a side table as I fasten the door chain and edge it open. It's my landlord, holding up a can of insecticide. Hastily, I put down my makeshift weapon and let him in. He keeps chatting away in Serbian and lies down to spray under the bed, making satisfied grunts as he works. I don't know what he's found down there, but he uses enough chemicals to knock out an entire colony. I throw open the window and signal him that there's been enough fumigating for one day. Then I shower and change and head outside. In Belgrade, it feels like the buildings carry years of smog and soot, and so many walls are marked with graffiti, even here, in the center of town. But the art gallery belonging to Paulina Pavlik is faced in clean, pale granite. The double-height windows are sparkling clean, and inside the walls are pure white, showcasing some impressive photography pieces. The glossy surface of the floor looks like marble. At the far end of the gallery are the tables, the long wooden bar, and a coffee machine that resembles a piece of art itself. Gregory Pavlik must have spent a fortune on this for his daughter. I stand on the curb as the traffic passes, watching the gallery for a couple of minutes. Then I weave my way through the constant stream of passing cars and mopeds to cross the street. Feeling just a bit nervous, I push open the gallery door, walk past the exhibits, choose a small table, and sit down. I'm really not sure whether Paulina Pavlik will even be here. If your dad buys you an art gallery for Christmas, or your birthday, or whatever, I imagine it comes with all the perks, like staff, so that you don't actually need to get out of bed before noon. I order a drink. This is one of those places that has a little poster of happy Colombian coffee pickers and tells you what kind of fair trade beans they're grinding that day. It's truly great to know that, even while he traffics women around Eastern Europe, Gregory and his family are concerned about the welfare of coffee farmers. When my espresso arrives, the hype does seem worth it, though. The steam is fragrant and the coffee is smooth but bitter at the same time. As I enjoy the warmth of it spreading down into my stomach, I look out of the massive windows and am happily surprised to catch sight of Paulina emerging from a smoke-colored Mercedes. Not a bad set of wheels for someone her age. She's parked on a double yellow line right outside the gallery. Even in jeans and a shirt, she manages to look like a movie star arriving at a premiere. With a sideways glance, I see that a traffic cop is strolling over, probably to protest about her presumptuous parking arrangements. But she greets him like an old friend, with a light, practiced handshake that lasts just a moment too long. The policeman's hand goes directly to his pocket, casually, as he tucks away the money that Paulina has discreetly handed over. He moves on, pausing only to write out a ticket for the car behind hers. Meanwhile, Paulina enters, gliding through the gallery, casting brief smiles to people leaving and to a man who is looking at one of the photos on display. She makes her way toward the coffee bar, toward the table where I sit. As she gets closer into my line of vision, I look up from my iPad, as anyone would. She throws me a passing, radiant smile, and for a moment, I forget to breathe. Paulina is far more beautiful than even her best photos. Flawless skin, almond-shaped green-blue eyes, and caramel-colored hair that glistens with perfect, expensive highlights of honey and gold. I remind myself to smile back instead of just staring like a goldfish, after which she passes behind me and I force myself to focus back on reading a riveting website about the major historical sites of Belgrade. But, of course, I'm watching her. She seems at ease and in charge. She pauses to throw a comment to a passing waiter, stops to chat with a couple who are clearly regular customers, then takes out her phone and taps on it for a few minutes. Using my iPad to log into the gallery's free Wi-Fi, I open an app that helps me find the router that powers it. Once I have that, I'm all set. I signal to a bearded waiter in a half apron for the bill, and I pay it in cash. As I stand to leave, I make sure to scrape my chair and feel Paulina turn to look in the direction of the noise. I glance up and meet her look and nod goodbye before I leave. I have a bit of a spring in my step as I head into town. Maybe it's the sunshine, maybe the fact that I've locked onto Paulina already. While I'm out, I stop at a car rental office and collect a motorcycle. Nothing flashy, but with decent power and acceleration. Once I'm back in my room, I return to the information that I gleaned about the gallery's router. It's nothing fancy, probably one that the phone company installed as standard when they put in Paulina's phone line. It takes me all of 5 minutes to find the detailed specs for it and then to access a website that is helpful enough to list out the factory set passwords for most household routers. I go back to my phone app and tap in the information, and then I'm into the router itself. Basically, I can see what websites and apps Paulina uses all day. Of course, it also deluges me with a ton of nonsense about what her staff and customers do online. But trying to embed a program on her phone directly feels too risky at this point. I clear a bowl of dusty, dried flowers off the small dining table and set up my computer. Then I unfold a map of Belgrade and tack it to the wall, my own little situation room. The first thing I do is create a strong VPN, which changes my IP address every few minutes. This way, if Amber somehow gets a lead on my laptop in an effort to find me, it will look like I'm in Madrid 1 minute and Beijing the next. Second, I've managed to tune in to the Athena communication system. I swiped my thin foil earpiece from Amber's lockbox, but she closed down my frequency, and I've had to find another one to lock into, for which I have the software. Now I can hear about half of what's happening when my team is talking to each other. The other 50% gets lost in silence or in static, but it'll be enough to keep me more or less on track with their progress. Last, I've got that map of the city all neatly marked up. In red, I've noted the position of Gregory Pavlik's abandoned hospital, which seems to be the center of his trafficking activities. It's on the outskirts of the new part of the city, surrounded by boarded-up factories on one side and woodland on the other, with one main road in and out. And then there's a pin in the map for Gregory's home, which is also Paulina's, on this side of the river, in the swanky suburbs near the embassies. From a few exchanges in my earpiece between Caitlin and Amber, I know that Kit is scheduled to be in that house right now, checking the setup for the concert and probably meeting the evil Gregory for the first time. I hope she switches on the charm. The rented house that Kit, Peggy, and Caitlin are staying in is not far from Gregory's. Only Hala is out on her own, in an apartment somewhere, scoping out the hospital and, I assume, figuring out how to get photographic evidence of what goes on in there. While I'm trying to find out more about Gregory's Russian companies and the directors of the Victory Clinic, I tune in to the Athena comms every so often, just to keep tabs. I find out that Peggy is meeting Alex for dinner in a couple of hours. She doesn't say where, but that bit of code that I smuggled onto Alex's work computer weeks ago is still sitting there, and it's easy enough for me to access his calendar and get hold of the name of the restaurant he's booked into. I don't have a specific purpose in mind in keeping an eye on Peggy, but I'd like to see Alex in person, get a feel for him. I'm glad that my next bit of sleuthing will be around a meal, because I'm hungry. I make myself a dinner reservation and get decently dressed in black jeans and a smart top. The place Alex is taking Peggy is one of the best restaurants in the city, according to tourist sites. Before I leave, I make a quick trawl through Paulina's online usage. A couple of Instagram posts, some WhatsApp messages to friends, some browsing on a shopping site that sells art books, and then, while I'm watching, she accesses her online banking. She clicks on statements. Thank you, Paulina. And once those are downloaded to her phone, it's not hard for me to open them. A quick scan shows a healthy bank balance, a fair number of charges to closed shops, and then something more interesting. 2 very large deposits from a bank in Moscow at around the same time she was there. We're talking mid-6-figure sums. So maybe my hunch that Paulina is part of her father's empire is more than wishful thinking. I'm itching to sit down and look up the bank, work on this some more, but I figure it can wait a couple of hours. So I head off to tail Peggy and Alex at dinner. I get to the restaurant a good 40 minutes before Peggy is due to arrive. It wouldn't be great to bump into her at the front door. Outside, the summer light is soft and golden, but inside the place, it's really dark, which is probably a good thing for me since I want to skulk around unnoticed. As my eyes get accustomed to the low light, what reveals itself is a place made to look like a 1930s speakeasy. It's sort of like I walked onto the set of Casablanca, except in color. There are booths covered in rich green leather, wooden tables, a long zinc bar, waiters in white tuxedo jackets, ornate brass wall lamps, and basically every cliche in the book. There's even a guy playing jazz piano on a black baby grand. Next to him is a small round platform and a microphone where a blonde woman in a tight-fitting dress is singing. It's an old American classic, Gershwin, but she sings it with a strong Eastern European accent. The waiter seems taken aback that I'm eating on my own, but he gets over it and leads me right to the back of the room, past tables where couples and groups are already sitting and drinking, to a small booth in the rear. He hands me a leather-bound menu with more pages than the complete works of Shakespeare. Since I don't have 2 spare hours to read it end to end, I immediately settle for the set menu that's on the first page. I've worked my way through a salad mixed with mayonnaise and nuts, and I'm tucking into some grilled fish with lemon when I notice Alex Uchik. He's way across the room to the left, holding a chair for Peggy. He's tall and lean, and Peggy looks great in a deep blue dress. Instinctively, I shrink back into my seat, but she has her back to me, so there's not much chance she'll notice me. I call my waiter over and tell him that I'll skip dessert and just take the bill. While I wait, I watch Alex. I have a better view of him than of Peggy. Animated, warm, smiling a lot. He doesn't speak much. He's just asking Peggy questions and looking like he cares about the answers, which is actually pretty rare if you think about it. How many conversations have you been in where people are waiting for you to finish talking so they can chip in and tell their story of a similar thing that happened to them? Then the head waiter goes over and shakes Alex's hand like he's his long-lost brother. He talks animatedly, maybe describing all the special dishes he'll have the chef knock out just for them. The head waiter disappears, and I notice that Alex's hand comes up to touch Peggy's, which is resting on the table. I can't tell if it's a romantic thing or a friendly reassurance thing. Peggy squeezes his hand back, then puts her hands down, off the table, back in her lap. I can't get a read on it. Peggy's a widow. Her husband died just a few years back, and she can still barely mention him without tears coming to her eyes. But maybe she gets lonely sometimes. I mean, Alex is still sort of handsome, and Peggy's not that old. Within 5 minutes, the waiter returns with a wine bottle and goes through the opening and tasting rigmarole, after which he leaves it in an ice bucket near the table. As I'd hoped, Peggy excuses herself and goes off to the bathroom. I swear, there's an etiquette handbook somewhere that Peggy's parents had her inhale, and it says that a lady must always powder her nose 10 minutes after arrival at dinner. Leaving enough cash on the table to cover my meal, I get up to leave while Peggy is away. Alex's waiter is still scooping ice into the bucket around the wine bottle. As I walk, I pretend to look in my bag for something and bring out a tiny dot microphone on my fingertip. As I pass their table, I touch it to the base of the ice bucket and keep walking. The bucket is wet, but Amber's microphone dots stick to anything. Once I'm safely outside and on the next side street, I insert a tiny receiver into my ear, and instantly I can hear the waiter talking and a lot of rattling, which I assume is the ice inside the bucket. In a few seconds, it stops, and I can hear Alex welcome Peggy back to the table. I stand in the quiet doorway of a closed butcher's shop where a lamb's carcass hangs in the window beside me, and listen intently. It's all old friends catching up with each other at the moment. "How are the children?" Alex asks her. Alice is in college in New York, and Joseph's in Seattle now with my first grandchild. Peggy sounds as pleased as Punch. "It's unbelievable. You don't look nearly old enough to be a grandmother." What a line. Followed by silence. I wonder if he's trying the hand-holding again. "And your son?" she asks. "In the States." That's true. I checked on young Sasha's whereabouts. He's studying in Minnesota. "And Maya?" Peggy asks. "We divorced, finally." "I heard. I'm sorry." Alex makes a dismissive noise. She's married again to a so-called businessman who makes his money on the black market. Now she can have the Chanel bag she always wanted. Another thing that checks out with what I dug up on Alex. He pursued this thug through the courts only to have the case dismissed by a judge who somehow found the money to retire to Bermuda soon afterward. Then, to add insult to injury, Alex's wife, who was a former model, up and left him for the same thug. After this, they got onto the subject of Gregory Pavlik pretty quickly. Alex's tone drops much lower, almost to a whisper. He's repulsive, but he has a lot of people in his pocket with blackmail. Alex, don't feel like being impertinent, but does he have anything on you? I'm not into drugs or one-night stands. I'm sorry, I had to ask. Don't be, Alex said. Cleaning up this town has been a long road, getting one bastard at a time behind bars. There are 1 or 2 judges who care, and a small group of police. I meet with all of them every week to keep them inspired. But getting Pavlik would send a message to the whole of Serbia. What's your interest in him? I can't really discuss it at this point, but there may be some information coming that can help you. Well, with your contacts, nothing would surprise me. But be careful, Peggy, Alex says. You know I care about you. Good God, is he flirting with her? But Peggy says nothing and moves the conversation on to a charity gala she's organizing at the end of the year. Everything I've ever heard directly from Alex's mouth bears out my research and supports Peggy's faith in her friendship. I decide to head back home and follow up on Paulina's Russian money, which looks like a much more promising lead. That is the end of Chapter 6.